Yeah, I know that. Continue. And for the novice people, though, this may be of worth, but I'm basically going to tell my tales as an urban astronomer, trying to find objects without a go-to, and there's actually reasons why you won't. Now, when I mean urban, I mean I primarily from late 2018 to the current day, not counting the halt due to the pandemic, been observing from this observatory. This is Garvey Ranch Parks Observatory. It's I'm not sure if the mouse cursor is available, but back here is the
Uh,
parking lot.
David, I don't
Dave?
think your screen share is working.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe I didn't share the screen yet. Let me
Yeah.
give that a shot. Uh, what the heck's going on here? Is that? Yeah. Zoom meeting. Okay. Share the screen. Okay, we'll share that first.
There we go.
Okay. Now, can you see the mouse cursor? I'm moving it around.
Yes, we can see you moving.
Okay. Right down in here is a huge parking lot. Well lit. That's supposed to be a very dark gray up here. So tell me exposed. If you don't believe me, that light is a little overexposed and you can see the interiors right there. Anyway, so this is located in one of the most horrible urban locations to try and observe, but we make do. Yes, it's surrounded by trees. When we're waiting for the moon, especially this time of year, moon, Jupiter, or Saturn, or anything in the southeast part of the sky, we got to wait for it to clear these trees. And that's not the worst of it. If you turn your gaze in the other direction from this photograph, we have an athletic field, and yes, this is the sun has set, and it's got all these beautiful bright floodlights. So our Bortle rating is probably 8. We can't see first max stars, and that's about it. Insofar as our facility is, we got an 8-inch scope, which we use solely for visual, and that's in operation right now. And this black guy is a 4.7-inch refractor. We have an electronic finder up there with a 12-degree, yes, 2 degrees field of view. 2 cameras back here. I think the one straight through is deep sky. Yes, we've done deep sky, but I won't show any of those photographs. That's not what this is all about. And this is our planetary telescope. And if you look carefully at this mount, it is clock driven, but it's not computerized. So one of the early problems, once the guy that set it up, was how do we find objects? And I volunteered to do star hopping, and we've located quite a few deep sky objects that we successfully photographed. Some of the things we weren't able to photograph, as I talked about earlier, is we tried to photograph 6 8th to 10th mag comets and failed on all but one. So some things are out of our reach. Now, okay, let me share. So I'll sit here for a while before I get to the nitty gritty of this talk. I used every trick in the book. You can see our finder. That's actually the old finder, our old finder right there. It's an 8x50, and I recommend that because you can see 2nd and 3rd mag stars, even from an urban location, with an 8x50. And if you turn off all the dome lights and you get as darkly acclimated as you can, considering all the lights coming through the dome slit, you can see 4th mag stars. You won't see them with a tail wrap. Like I said, we're basically confined to 1st mag stars. So I soon realized, okay, I gotta relearn all my finder skills. One of those tricks is the reticle of a finder is at right angles to one another. Line those up, one north-south and one east-west. That way, when you use a star chart, you always know which direction you're gonna move. You just look at those reticles. Believe me, you can see them plainly because the sky's so darn bright, and you can move in the direction you want to. Now, I've always done star hopping with equatorial mounts. You can use these same techniques that I'm going to explain on the Dobsonian or alt-azimuth mounts. It's just trickier. And the reason why is because if you use an equatorially mounted scope, then those grids on star charts, and I use printed star charts. Yeah, I'm old-fashioned, but you can use Starry Night Pro, which I will show in a while. But if you go right ascension, which is east-west, and declination, which is north-south, those directions will not change. It doesn't matter if you're looking to the east, you're looking to the west, you're looking to the north, you're looking to the south. It doesn't matter, they won't change. With an alt-azimuth mount, because you're moving one axis parallel to the horizon, the other axis straight up and down, east, west, and north, south in the sky are going to change every time you look at an object, unless you can figure out a way to move your scope in right ascension or declination. It can be done. I have done it that way, but it's a little trickier. But there are certain techniques that you can use for star hopping that do this. Now, I'm going to stop this share temporarily and get to the share screen and share, try and share. There it goes. This is Starry Night Pro. It doesn't matter which program you use, but because they all have the same database these days. One star hop. Now remember, from Garvey Ranch, that star I'm pointing to, Vega, that's pretty much the only one you can see. And it could be straight up, as far from any light pollution as you could possibly get. You could have an absolutely clear sky, the haze isn't there, and still that's the only one you're gonna see. Because unfortunately for us, that athletic field I showed you earlier doesn't turn off its lights, and we've asked. It doesn't turn off its lights until 9:30, and Garvey Ranch is only open till 10 o'clock. We have to be out of there. So it's like, okay, so I can see this star. How do I get to M13? First off, confine your movements to east-west or north-south. Don't go off on a diagonal, because I found that people who do that, my experience has been, it's a little harder for them to backtrace. Whereas with an equatorial mount, if you just move RA or just declination, it's easy to backtrace, because all you got to do is move one axis. Now, if you're using paper star charts, I would recommend you cut out a hole on a piece of paper, then laminate it or put it in plastic sleeves. That's 5 degrees wide. That's the field of view of pretty much any 8x50 finder. So that way, if I put, that's the outer circle. The inner circle is 1 degree. I just put that in just for reference. That way, if I center on Vega, and I enlarge it a bit, this is your star field. You'll definitely see that star, definitely see that star. These fainter stars, well, of course, I'm talking about an urban location. The darker your skies, the easier it is. In fact, one of the problems with a dark sky I found is I'm so used to finding things in an urban location, all the stars confuse me. I got to readjust my mind to say, okay, you can see that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And it's like, oh, brother. The trick to star hopping is memorizing patterns. Now, this is probably not, and I guarantee you it is not pattern that you will see. It's going to be rotated in the finder because it's a telescope. And the one we got right now has got a star diagonal, which means it's got additional rotation. If you can arrange it, you can move a star diagonal such that it will show a right side up view. In other words, north is at the top and east is to the left. The other directions take care of themselves. But if you can't, then you memorize this thing. And I'll show you the star hop that I use, this exact star hop that I use. Then I move it this way. I'm trying to move just in right ascension, east-west, and just as Vega exits out, you could use that star, which is fifth mag, in this faint triangle here to line up. But a little better is go back to Vega. It's a trick I use. That star, which is visible in the finder, you can center on it if you want to, and now go east, and now this star pops into view. If you continue further on, when this thing is past middle, you see these two stars. Now, at this point, a star chart, a printed star chart, isn't going to show you colors. Okay, so I was surprised at how yellow these stars were. They're really very nice. And that highlights one of the reasons why I will continue the star hop and I will never use a go-to. First off, if you use a go-to, you go from Vega directly to M13. You don't look at anything in between. You will miss these stars. And they might be a delight to you if you like star colors like I do. And if you continue on, more or less center on this pair, this yellowish orange star appears. And that's how you star hop. You go from one recognizable thing to another. Yeah, you have to learn how bright a fourth mag or fifth mag star is going to be, but it doesn't take long. Center on that. Now the next hop is a leap of faith. Now notice I'm still moving to the west, still moving in just one axis. Notice that star disappeared out of the field of view. But soon afterward comes these trio of stars, one of which definitely has a yellowish orange tinge to it. Now, this is where lining up the reticles north-south, as I'm doing with my mouse, or east-west this way really helps. Why? Well, if you want to, what I would do is put that near the bottom, tool along. Conveniently, there's a line there. Tool along. You get to that star. Notice where M13 is. So if you go north until that star, notice he's almost ready to leave the field of view. And guess what's more or less centered in your field of view? And that's how you find it. You can also go there. I have to expand it because I haven't hunted this object down too many times. But you can also backtrack to this trio of stars, center on the middle one, and start heading north. Now, some of these star patterns, yeah, I should have dimmed this so it doesn't include anything except up to fourth mag stars. But you'll notice star patterns like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. You could also include that star, in which case you got a triangle with 3 stars there. It just depends upon how detailed you want it. But for sure, you should be able to see this triangle. And if you keep going, notice knowing the finder's field of view helps you, because just as this guy exits, look what pops into the field of view, almost centered. Now, why the 1 degree field of view? Guess what? Most telescopes, if you pop in a 24, 25 millimeter, or especially a 32 millimeter, that's about a 1 degree field of view, give or take. Smaller the scope, the wider the field of view. The larger the scope, the narrower. But unless you consider a C16 portable, and I know some guys that have, they must work out. You know? Anyway, unless you consider that portable, you're not going to go quite that high. 5-inch, 8-inch, that's probably doable. And that's how you star hop. Now, the thing about it is what you discover along the way. Normally, if you go to Epsilon, Lyra, what do? It's simple. You center on Vega, it's right there. I decided to just try something. So without knowing, because I'm using paper star charts, remember, I'm not using this program. I decided let's go to that star, which directly south of Epsilon, then goes north, and see if that little hop works. So I did this, centered it. I could see that star almost in the finder. Nice orange star. How many of us have skipped this guy because we want to see that guy? And don't answer that question, entirely rhetorical, because everybody does. But by doing this, I discovered there's a little gem right here. If you like orange to red stars, you ought to take a look at it. You really should. Now, some people will say, well, that's a long star hop. If you're going to do it that long, why not go from Antares? Well, I mean, not Antares, but Arcturus. Well, for starters, it's a little longer. It's going to be lower in the sky, especially if this he's already crossed the meridian. This is definitely getting low in the sky. But you really could do it from Arcturus. It's arbitrary. You just have to be able to identify that first back star, hopefully. And this highlights some of the other things about star hopping. You have to learn the sky. But you don't have to learn the whole thing at one shot. Just tool in this little area, because if you really wanted to, you got a sparse but nice open cluster here. You got the ring nebula right between these two guys. You got M13. You got M3 and M53, which is not spectacular as 3 or 13, but it's worth a look. And so is 92. So you already got several things in this area. And as you're going from one to another, especially if you use paper star charts, and once again, they don't show colors, it's like you'd be surprised at what you ran into. I've run across quite a few things just because of that. And I also run into quite a few things because I goofed. I'll get to that as a third star hop. Now, the other incredibly long star hop is due to a very simple thing. I just got through saying that I can't see anything with the unaided eye as far as first mag stars are concerned. So guess what? The square is not available. Why would that be important? Well, that's a good way to find M15, but you got to start off from Altair, which can be seen. So, expanding this up a bit so that we get our finder in there. Here's a tale of an object that I ran into by sheer accident. Now, start from Altair and note your orientation. Note the star pattern, this star and this star underneath, although it's this star that's probably the most important. And then you tool east. Now you hop from one faint star to another, and it does get kind of dicey. You have to determine what your faintest star is from the Garvey Ranch location. It's fourth max stars through the finder. So I'm tooling along here. Actually, I think I start off with this star. So I just above out there, tool it across, came across this, verified this is Delphinus by simply bumping the scope up and getting back here. See, if you just go north, you can head south without any problems. But then I noticed this guy, he's on the chart. I said, well, I didn't know there was a globular there. So I just went south. And here's where you learn how to center objects in using the finder. I noticed this pair of star and that pair of star. This guy is right between them, but not directly south of that line. Then I noticed this. Now all you got to do, the north-south reticle, split these guys right down the center. And for this guy, you're right above, and unfortunately the lines are blurring, but you're right above these three stars. Yeah, there are a bunch of other stars in position, but you memorize this bent line just above there by about 1 degree. And that's a nice globular, 6934. And when you get tired of imaging or viewing that, you just keep going. This is where if you expand it, then you know where you're headed. Keep going. You won't get all the stars, but the stars of Equus, I think it's Equus, the little horse, are there. And from there, you can hop, hop, and hop. Now, these are all individual. You got to invent your own thing. You got to be comfortable with how you see patterns. Nobody sees patterns in the same way. I like pairs and triangles. Other people might see horse, you know, might see shrimp or might see crabs, you know, whatever you can visualize in the sky, do it that way. By the way, a check for this location is that, especially if I go this way, north, that star, east, this pair of stars, east, that pair of stars, between, almost roughly between these guys and these guys, about 2 degrees further north from this guy to this guy, roughly center. Some of this is guesswork, but this works far better the more you train on it. And since you know this is 5 degrees, notice where these stars are. 2.5 degrees above that line is 15. Now, you discover a ton of stuff, and I'm gonna have to flip seasons here. Maybe deep enough. By the way, I'm gonna have a short plug here for printed star charts. You don't have to worry about batteries running low, especially in an observatory, because there's always AC current. If you don't have that, you can't track. And the other thing is they're a nice, large, convenient size. I have the Star Atlas, the Terran Star Atlas, and it's 11 by 17. And with one eye with a cataract and the other eye at I think it's a +5. It's like I need all the help I can get. Now, the last one that I thought of relating to, boy, I'm gonna have to use the cursor keys because the open cluster 2362, which is worth a look because there's a bright star, which Wikipedia claims is part of the cluster, but it's a full magnitude brighter than any other star in the cluster. No other star in the cluster is even close to it. Now this one's easy, right? We got Sirius. Now let's be honest with one another. If you can't see Sirius in the sky, it's either because it isn't the correct season or it's completely clouded in. In either case, you shouldn't be wasting time. So you head, now it turns out these are first mag stars. At least they're listed as that. So this little triangle, that star, and that star, are visible most of the time, especially if you wait till they get close to the meridian. So that's not a problem. So I thought, okay, so let's expand it. Let's get to the top star. And there's the finder's field of view. So already in the finder's field of view is this arc of stars, fairly bright. Okay, actually it's this cluster I want to get to, 2362. Yeah, I said that. I don't know why I said differently. So it's an easy star hop because look up here, and this is 6 max stars, so you may have trouble with them, but they're right above this star, which is Wesen or Wesen, if you pronounce it, learning how to pronounce it. So you go up here, and you can hunt across. That's one way to find it. Or you can head east till you get to this looks like part of Cetus. See, that's how I remember things. I remember what the constellation looks like. Cetus. And you go north. There was only one problem with that idea. I went a little too far north. And I thought, okay, those are the pair of stars. That's what I needed. Notice that it was sitting there in the finder's field of view all this time. And I looked at one of these stars. Here it comes. And this was in October. I'll tell you why I remember that in just a moment. That's an alberyl double. In fact, it's better than alberyl. The yellow is much yellower and the blue contrasts very well with it. I didn't even know this object existed. And the only reason I now knew that the object existed is because I overshot my guide stars. So even your failures can yield interesting results. See, this is where I wanted to be, and reduce it for, yeah, see, so in the finder's field of view, and this is where, I get it again. This is where I wound up to be. Now, I thought to myself, yeah, I never heard of this. Maybe I should write an email bulletin or something like that. And next month's Sky and Telescope said, the winter alberyl. And guess what they were referring to? Right there. So you make serendipitous discoveries if you star hop. Why? Because if you use the go-to, I'll emphasize that again, you'll go directly from here to directly there. Now, I'm not saying don't use go-tos, because if it's a really star poor region, this is not. But if it's a really star poor region, you're going to need it, especially from an urban location. But even in a deep sky location, sometimes it's like there's, like in the Sculptor region south of Cetus, that can be daunting because there are not that many stars there. There are enough to guide in on, but it's not for the faint of heart. One example of which is I can find NGC 253, the Sculptor galaxy, but the globular NGC 288, I've missed on occasion. If I had a go-to, I wouldn't have missed it. But it's in a region of the sky that's like, okay, it's a little tough to line up things, because one trick of star hopping is if I didn't know this thing was there, notice these star patterns. Now this star is right above it. Suppose this one was invisible. This star is right above it, so you center on it. And then you notice how far you have to go. It's less than half a degree. So you just bump that up, and there you have it. How do you line up east-west? You look for a pattern out here or out here. Basically, you're looking, star hopping, if I was looking for patterns for the final hunt. So even if you don't see this object, you can center on it. Fact is, that's how I found NGC 288 to begin with. I employed this trick, and on the third try, I finally saw the globular. It's tough because it doesn't have a condensed stellar core, so it won't appear as a bright star, but it is a very nice globular. Now we've done additional star hops all over this region, and a little further north, and along Orion. And oh, by the way, yes, I've used star hopping not only to find this famous globular, but I'm not sure if it's up yet. Yeah, there it is. That's a very nice globular with a stellar core. It is very, very nice. Yeah, it's low to the horizon. It's going to be a little tough, but it's worth the hunt. But notice that basically what I do is I hunt from there. I remember how I did this. See, every star hop can be individual and different. There's no one way. In fact, a lot of it depends upon what stars you see. If you could see these stars down here, then you go directly to there. You find these guys. You go there. You notice this fourth max star and that fourth max star, maybe 1/3 of the way across, and just scan downward. Sometimes you have to do that. In fact, there's quite a few objects that I put a wide angle eyepiece in that 8-inch refractor. That's a 1-degree field of view. Now you know why I got that circle there. And I just scan for it. Just slowly scan. And the reason you can do that is if you have an equatorial mount, you know you're in one axis. So if you didn't find it, go back to these 2 stars in the finder, put it 1/3 of the way across like this, and start a slow scan again. But pay attention to what you're looking at, because there are a lot of objects up there that are within range. I found within range of amateur instruments, but they're not charted. Or if they are, it's some obscure catalog that I barely heard of. And not every, well, certainly not, you won't find the most uncommon things uncharted in a paper star chart. If you did, you couldn't tell the objects from the stars or vice versa. With an electronic one, you can blank some certain ones out and add certain ones in, but even then, could be very, very tough. But I think it's worthwhile for a lot of reasons. You can use any scope. Doesn't matter if it's computerized or not, you can use any scope. Just match up star patterns as you go along. You're going to learn the sky, and you're going to learn that there are objects in between these things that you're looking for. And some of them might surprise you and interest you. You're going to have fun doing it. Yes, it's a little more frustrating, but like I said, you're seeing parts that a lot of amateurs skip over. Like for instance, I can verify that in a 10-inch that I didn't see anything, but again, I didn't use the 10-inch till I got to here and scanned downward. I can guarantee you I didn't see anything of worth there from a dark sky, but who knows what's in between here and here and here. But you really need a finder. That makes invisible stars visible and helps you to center objects. And that's it. So I'll answer any questions.
Okay.
Or I'll try to. Any questions?
How often do you go to Garvey Ranch?
From October of 2018 to March of 2020, I was going every Wednesday, even if it was cloudy. The only time, well, we actually opened it up even on rainy days because we used to hold a mirror grinding competition in the workshop, and there were other reasons. But even if we couldn't open up the dome, we could show off the telescope. And that actually happens at Griffith Observatory too. I noticed that, buddies of mine that I know operate the telescope. I said, where the heck are you going? Well, we're going up to the roof, but it's cloudy outside. I go, we can still talk about the scope. It's like a museum piece. And it is, it's a 12-inch Zeiss. When was the last time you saw a 12-inch Zeiss?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sweet scope. The only difficulty with the 12-inch Zeiss is I happen to know the guy that was in charge of that scope, and I would often find objects that he couldn't. For instance, we both tried to photograph Pluto on the night when the Pluto encounter occurred for New Horizons, which was July 15th or something like that in 2015. And I managed to photograph Pluto. It took me an hour and a half, but I did it. And I verified it by imaging an hour later, and the thing had moved.
Yeah.
Then I knew, no asteroid moves that slowly. There's only one object.
What did it look like in your image? What kind of a?
It's a star.
Just a star.
That's right. That's why I had to detect movement. I was 95% sure by its position. There was no star in that position. And no star chart will go that faint, the 14th mag. So how did I know that? The SDSS plates, which is the Palomar survey, which goes down to 20th mag, I think. I called up the plate, centered it on Pluto, grabbed that image, And I used that. I put a printout and I used that. And I looked at it and I know Pluto, it was taken long ago, so Pluto is not in that image. And I said, that star is not in this image. That's how I knew. That's how usually you find Pluto, by a star that isn't supposed to be there.
That
But
isn't there.
Yep, it's not supposed to be there. Not supposed to be there.
Is
It's
it
like-
possible for you to trim those trees that are
No.
big?
We've asked to be able to manually turn off the floodlights. We've asked if they could trim the trees. And Monterey Park, who actually owns that building, we only own the equipment inside. We don't own the building. And Monterey Park has basically just walked away from us. So we got the impression that, you know, we're there at their grace. And actually it's a fun site. We have to just live with its limitations. And but I'm surprised at the objects that we've been able to find. I think if it's in season, and it clears the surrounding terrain, we have photographed it. Except for the extreme south, because we got a huge hill there, which is home to a reservoir with a concrete covering. So Jupiter and Saturn for us are blurry objects because guess what? They're in the south right now, and guess what? Their highest due south. That's where that concrete that's been heating up all summer long. That concrete.
Oh, so it
Yes.
radiates heat and you get a bad view from that
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, terrible, terrible. Deep skies you can do. The field of view backs up enough to where you can do it. We've actually seen them with low power eyepiece. But you try to magnify for the planet, and it's like, gee, this reminds me of that swimming pool that I used to go to with all the kids splashing around. It's like, oh God, this is terrible. Terrible.
What kind of a crowd do you bring? What's amount of people come to view?
Sometimes there's a dozen people up there, which is why we got a problem, because if they're going to limit us, we have to do crowd control. And sometimes there's certain nights where we don't see anybody at all. And me and my companion, who's the imager, he'll say, is there any deep sky objects up there? Sure, it's about, you know, I don't move it like this, but I'm able to find a lot of stuff. I think the furthest south was a sombrero, which we actually also visually saw. That amazed me. That amazed me until I remembered I saw it with a 60 millimeter finder back in the late 1960s, when it was a lot darker around like Rosemead and San Gabriel. But I saw it from within the city. Now these days, that's going to be a lot tougher. Just a little. But,
would it be possible for PVAA to get a tour of that observatory?
sure.
It could be during the day, but it'd be better if it could be at night, on a night when you aren't normally open to the public, so that we don't have two groups of people.
Right. Now I will forward that to at least two of our members. It's just a question of, we need keys and somebody who knows the burglar alarm code so the police don't descend on us. And I don't have either.
Okay.
So I'm always dependent upon one of those guys. There's three guys that have the keys and the code. And I want to keep it just in their hands. So I'm just basically along for the ride. But I will transmit your request to them, and we'll see if we can set it up. We'll try and set it up other than a Wednesday night, because we're committed Wednesdays. We got to open up the facility to the public, and I'd rather just have us either. Well, I'll be there, but one of the other guys got to be there, and then you guys can be there, and you know, in my books, you know what, it is a little crowded up there, but so long as we wear masks and we got the down seat. We have a wind problem there, like every observatory I've been at, and that includes Griffith. So if we open up the downstairs doors and we open up the dome, believe me, there's going to be air flowing through there like you won't believe. It's
Yeah.
going to be well ventilated, which is why I think the city of Monterey Park should take that into account. But
Well, it would be neat to see a 12-inch Zeiss
oh no, that's Griffith.
Oh, I thought you said this one was a Zeiss.
No, I said I switched to Griffith for a short spell, and that's
Oh, okay.
This one's an 8-inch astrophysics.
Oh, okay.
Boy, is it a good scope.
Well, that would be neat to see too.
Yeah. And by
And-
then we should have our imaging equipment up. So see, since both scopes are pointed, actually, both finders are pointed in the same direction.
Yeah,
It's if you see it, if you see it in one or the other, it's in the other scope instantly.
yeah. I would like to hear about the history of that site too, you know.
Okay, then I'll have to specifically request Tim Thompson because he knows that history. Last time I checked, he knows it inside or out. Basically, I entered into its history as a member of the Monterey Park Astronomical Society, which is long gone and disappeared. The city was trying to find somebody to open it up and operate it on Wednesdays, and that's when the LAAS, and Tim knows about this, I don't know much about this, somehow the LAAS talked them into it, and LAAS has been operating ever since, every Wednesday.
Okay.
Now the equipment upgrades up there, which I showed you, especially with the black telescope and the cameras, that I think is solely a guy by the name of Vance Tyree, because he has, and that's all his equipment, and he's not using it anymore. So I know he does his own imaging, so it's like, he's one of those guys, right? Has 12 scopes. You can only look at one of them instead of one at a time. So I don't see 12 scopes are going to do anybody. But he's got a ton of cameras too, apparently. So he's not missing those 2 cameras up there, but he knows exactly how they operate.
Okay.
But I'll see what I can do, and I'll tell Tim, no, we really need somebody who knows the history of this crazy place, and we'd like to do it on a non Wednesday night, so we're not interfered by the public,
Right.
right?
And what if we promise to bring dusters to help out with the spider problem? Would that get us in?
No, we got it under control, despite my urging that we get a flamethrower. We bug bombed the place, and temporarily the infestation has subsided, but
They'll be back.
yeah, they are. We also have a wasp problem that we have to be aware of up there, but it's usually only in the summertime, and usually the wasps get cooked because that dome gets very hot.
Mhm.
It's like the Griffith domes. One time I was up in the Seelestat dome at 9 o'clock in the morning, and already just in there for a few minutes, I was starting to sweat. It gets, because it's a metal surface with no paint on it. So both cases, so it's like, oh, this is gonna boil. And it
Just an
did.
oven.
Nature of the beast. Anything else? Any questions?
You know, I have a little book of objects to look at that are, you know, very bright, and it comes with a Telrad circle on it. You know, the little circle and then the big circle, and I have a Telrad on my scope, so that makes it really nice to be able to star hop when it's actually part of the you know, whatever page I'm looking at, like M4, you know, you go, okay, well, here's Scorpio, and there's, okay, here's that star, move over, you got it, you know? And same thing for M13. Of course, you got to be able to see, you know, those stars, but
It's easy if you can see those stars.
yeah,
But like I said, the reason some people may think I'm nuts for starting at Vega, well, guess what, guys? Arcturus is too low, Vega's overhead. I have to use what I can see.
right.
Because initially I point with a tail rad at Vega. After that, I'm on the 8x50 finder.
Okay.
And not by choice.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right.
Let me not share.